future, talk radio will actually educate, inspire, and make you think. The future is now. Topics and music that affect your life from Universal Broadcasting Network. Tune in at ubnradio.com. Now that you've found UBN Radio and discovered our quality talk shows, it's time to spread the word to friends, family, and the universe. 24 hours of music and talk radio without limits. That's why people keep coming back for more. That's ubnradio.com.
I got a few new listeners, and you guys called me and text me and said you were going to be watching the show. So then you asked me, why do I say morning when it's in L.A.? It's not morning, but when I see that smile on your face, I think the sun is coming up. Oh, I actually thought about that with myself. No, that's an original creation there. But anyway, glad to be back in town. I was on the East Coast here, and I know I missed everybody. No one missed me because no one sent me any checks to say, Larry, I'm paying you to come back. Didn't get that, so I'm a little bit sorry about that. But anyway, I did get a lot of emails and phone calls and stuff. So there's a lot going on. And what we're going to do, she wants to put them down. The engineer is telling me to put the headphones down, and I've been trying to teach them some sign language, but they don't really want to pay me any attention. So wait till we get on air and get to doing all of this stuff right here, and then I'm supposed to read and know what he's talking about. I'm kicking butt today, man. I'm on it. That's because I'm happy to be back. Anyway, since this hour go by so fast, and I will just say I want to thank all the listeners for the emails and stuff that I got from the show that Carolyn and everybody did. So first of all, let me say thank you. Carolyn is in the house with me. We get to do a show together again. It's been a long time.
Yes, it has been. And thank you for the opportunity to do last week. We had a wonderful platform, and we're going to continue the conversation today. And Etoy Ridgnal is with us also.
Give me that name again.
Etoy. Yes. Yeah. Ridgnal.
Someone needs to speak it up a little louder for me because I'm old and my ears.
Etoy Ridgnal.
Etoy.
I'm not attached.
Yes.
Well, you know what? I normally go through this monologue and talking about all this stuff. So just throw a few things out there. We just went through the chaos and the bombing that happened in Europe. It was
in Paris.
Mm-hmm. And ICE is on the move. And then we had the Martin Luther King's holiday, and then we just had our president to give which was a wonderful speech. I thought it was a wonderful speech. But before we jump into the rest of the story, would you guys like to come in on Barack Obama's speech, president's speech, or you want to tie that into something later? It's your show. You tell me, and I'm willing to go.
Well, I am excited to hear him energized, powerful, and leading. The last time he spoke, maybe I felt like he was not quite on the game, although I know he's always intellectually there. But I didn't think that he had the same energy. But his speech on Tuesday was magnificent. He was very powerful. And I actually was able to be on a conference call with our Congresswoman Karen Bass afterwards to discuss some of the things he did and conversations he had. But I felt proud of him standing up and sharing what had been accomplished, because I don't think we've done it well enough.
Yeah, and I don't say this lightly. I really, I love to hear it coming from African American women. And I think me sitting here with two powerful, intelligent, and I just love this. So tell me what you thought about the speech.
I would have to agree. I think many folks have been wanting to see the President Obama that they voted for, and I think folks really felt like they saw that energy and that spirit. I have to say it's been really wonderful to see him being in a position where he can actually, play offense, as he said, and not always be in a defensive posture. I gotta admit it. It's pretty nice, to see him being able to say, "I'm gonna move this forward, and you're either with me or you're not." And the things he advanced were pretty far-reaching. Paid sick leave, equal pay for women. We're talking about some pretty good stuff.
Well, the thing that I look at and I listen to a lot of us, and especially in the African American community, those that decide to criticize everything they do as well. And I think too many times too many of us look at him as a freedom fighter, as a civil rights leader. And we forget that this man is the president of the United States of America. So he can't get up there and yell and scream like an Al Sharpton, which everybody play their part. Everybody play their part.
Yes.
And I love what Al Sharpton does. I won't deny what Jesse Jackson have done and from other leaders we've had in the community. But I think when we stop to think that this is not someone that is a freedom fighter, he's the president of the United States, and then you can appreciate a little bit more of what he's saying, the message that he's delivering.
Well, my only contention with that
Please.
is the Republicans don't seem to know that he is the president of the entire United States and operate with him. And I'm always fascinated. I've been fascinated these last several years, 6 years, where the Republican contingent, I know that their agenda is stopping Obama. I don't know what positive there is, but it's always to stop him and to end whatever bills, policies he's interested in. And now there's a majority Republican, and I know something can get done. But it's unfortunate that so many years were lost with there just being a one-way street.
So I think, when I look at it, and I want you guys' opinion on it, the Republican finally got what they want in a lot of ways, except for the presidency. But they're in control of the House. They're in control of the Senate. So they have the power now. So now it's really is going to be more and more magnified what they're doing to either pull the country back or move it forward. Do you think that's kind of like, okay, you got it now?
They're definitely under the microscope.
Yes.
And they know that there's an expectation for them to govern. And so I think some of the tactics that they've tried in the past aren't going to be as effective because the responsibility falls a lot more on them now than it probably did previously.
Yes, and to add to that, they actually have to have an agenda now. There has to be goals, plans, expectations that we say we can do this, we plan to do this, instead of just having it as a battlefield.
As women, not just African American women, but women, period. And coming from an African American woman point of view, sitting here with you guys, was there anything in the speech that spoke to you as women in America?
I have to say I'm really, as a mom, first and foremost, but also as a woman, for me, the paid sick leave is huge because one of the things that people don't realize, when poor people get sick, they lose their jobs, right? When middle to upper income folks get sick, they get, paid leave, they get a chance to, be with their families. But, for most poor and working class families, if you're sick for beyond a couple of days, you risk losing your job. And so that's a huge, huge piece.
And one of the things that I see, you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, and which we know I'm never wrong, but no, I'm just kidding. This thing of taking what is community college and making that as free as a high school, that would be so huge for the African American community, and especially young mothers, young black women, or single mothers young single mothers across the board. I think that would just be so huge for that poor and upper middle leading into the middle class.
Absolutely.
And so, do you
I think
see
that's a
that
huge piece.
as part of the great Martin Luther King's dream? Did we see a little bit of his dream in this? So now I'm bringing it into.
I think in many ways, the President Obama's presidency is one aspect of the dream being fulfilled. I definitely would say that. I think when we look at Dr. King's commitment to the poor and really lifting and leveling the playing field for the poor, you definitely could argue that, which things like the free community college plan, with health insurance for all through Obamacare. Yeah, I mean, there are quite a few initiatives. There was a recent investment of, I believe, $25 or $45 million in cybersecurity for HBCUs, for example. So there have been some really great investments that I think the president has made that I think move us a little bit closer towards that goal.
Yes, and there's some other projects that he's done supporting boys and bringing
My Brother's Keeper.
Brother's Keeper program. So there are some things that are associated with that, and but I think on a deeper basis, and I'm going to play a little devil's advocate here.
That's my job, but I'll let you do it. Duh.
And I don't want to say it this way, but in observing our commitment, I talked last week about people dying for the vote and us not voting. People died to go to school. And I don't believe that we are performing in a way to take advantage of what we have. I'm totally supportive of community college, but I encourage anyone listening to talk to your children about being in school, completing school. Don't drop out of high school. Find ways to stay in school and to take advantage of what we have already in high schools, and then to take the next step and go to community college. But a lot of our black and brown youth don't get a high school degree because they're dropping out, or they find out too late, or the way the system works, they're not being counseled. There are no more guidance counselors. In fact, I saw something recently that said there's like one counselor to 1,000 students. Right. So they're not able to effectively work with young people to give them guidance about next steps and what they should be paying attention to as far as class. And I've done a lot of coaching with young people, and they just really don't know. They don't know to look. You have to look at not only the next semester, but the semester after, and whatever your goals are to graduate, because if you don't have all the credits at a certain time, you're not going to graduate. If you don't fulfill certain courses, you're not going to graduate. And in California in particular, I can't speak for all of the states, but if you are 18 before you graduate and you do not have all of your classes completed, they do not continue you in school because they're only required to educate you until you're 18.
But now, when you talk about black and brown kids, here's one of the problems with that. They are punished in schools for things that white kids are not. They are kicked out of school for less offenses. And what they call truancies.
And they have security at the door.
They're punished for just it's across the board where they are not allowed to have the freedom as young people and the same as they are in the white community. Right. And so the fair and equal judgment and discipline in the schools has to be addressed in order for us to get to that point.
I agree.
So you was going to say?
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I mean, there are a lot of reasons why black and brown kids aren't graduating at the same rates. I think, to the point about guidance counselors, one, you've got to have culturally competent
Yes.
people serving in those
That's
roles.
a very good point.
Absolutely.
I remember myself being in high school and, distinctly experiencing one set of people being counseled towards Harvard and Princeton and elite Ivy League schools, and another set of kids being counseled towards the Army, the military. And it usually was black and brown youth. And, I happen to be one of those young people who was like, I'm going to college. I don't care what you say to me. And so I think we do have to have educators, we have to have counselors, we have to have adults in the building that actually have a vision of success, of power, of possibility for our children.
A higher
Number one,
vision than they
have to
have
have
today.
a higher vision for our students because quite honestly, telling a child for 12 years you're going to school just so you can get a good job may motivate some, but it's not going to motivate most folks.
Right.
That's just not inspirational, right? It
Well,
has
that
to be
whole-
tied to some bigger.
That whole mindset has
process.
changed. That's kind of an antiquated kind of way of looking at
It
life
is.
now because with technology and where the jobs are moved out of the country.
Yeah, you
and-
don't get a job
Yeah,
when you graduate from high
it's
school.
like there was a generation where you knew that if you got a good job with Lockheed or you got a good job with GM, or you could retire. You got a
Right.
good job with the post office, or
Right.
those was considered for African Americans really that built the middle class community. And even for many whites, but that long-term job is the post office that's gone,
Shifted.
leaving, and,
Yes.
and with them privatizing everything, UPS and all these guys coming in, they're not offering the same packages as I understand it. Then so with the schools that you guys talking about, so how do we move forward with this? With the Martin Luther King's dream.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's so funny. One of the pieces that was born on this past Martin Luther King Day was a movement called Reclaiming Martin Luther King, and there was a strong movement to move beyond the broader, what we call sanitized vision of Dr. King, of being this colorblind leader who wanted to unify everyone, to a more radical vision, someone who actually believed in ensuring that poverty was eradicated for everyone, that we became a country that was not engaging militarily all the time, that we were a country that addressed issues of racial justice head on. And so I think
And war.
exactly.
He was a radical.
He was,
And in fact,
and that's something people don't realize.
Yes, some of the statistics are that 71% of the African American churches did not support him, and something like 50% of the whites did not support him. But we have a holiday because we fought for a holiday, but it wasn't because people loved him while he was here.
Well, let me ask you. Now, I'm you know me. I'm kind of crazy in my thinking out there. I mean, they gave the Native American a buffalo, a nickel with an Indian head on it, and flipped it over, and there was a buffalo on the back, and decimated their community at the same time. But they gave them a nickel. Do you see that? That's part of what some of the people in higher places was trying to do with the Martin Luther King dream. Well, they just giving us a holiday and saying, Negroes, shut up, you got a holiday, and pull yourself up by your bootstrap. Is that where we are?
Well, they didn't give us the holiday. There was a lot of fighting. There was a lot of petitions that went through with Coretta Scott King right here. Stevie Wonder helped with that process. It was a lot of petitions from all over the country for the holiday to happen. So it wasn't, some major leader saying, we know this would be important, so here it is. It was through movements. It was a movement over about 20 years before there was a holiday.
No, I get that. I get that. But, I'm just saying some of the people involved. And I didn't see the movie yet.
Oh, okay.
So What did you get out of the movie that you didn't? Is there something that you got out of this movie? What's it called? Selma.
Selma.
Selma that you didn't know before?
Yeah, I would actually say exactly what we're talking about here. The thing that I love, and I'm an African American Studies major, so I studied the Civil Rights Movement, studied Dr. King and other leaders of that time, and I have to say I was very impressed with the focus on King as strategist, the focus on him as an organizer, a man with a plan, a very human man, but also a man with a plan and someone who was building towards something much bigger. It wasn't as organic or random as people thought it was, and someone who really was a fighter. I think that's one of the things that you walk away from the film, but also seeing all the other voices that participated in making it possible. Diane Nash, C.T. Vivian, Ralph Abernathy, all these other folks who held the space for him and with him to make him even possible.
Yes.
To make it possible for him even to lead in the way that he was able to lead. And so I think what the movie does, and the reason why I think it's so timely for now, is it really talks about how, one, power concedes nothing without a demand. I completely left feeling that more than ever. But also that we have to have a community of support when we're talking about organizing, we're talking about movement building, we're talking about making long-term change, that it has to be something that is engaging a broad cross-section of folks.
I would piggyback on that to say that King was what I call a true leader. He had a vision, he had a plan, and he knew how to build coalition and cooperation. And he brought together parties that wouldn't necessarily talk to each other, from SNCC to SCLC to the NAACP. I've had the honor of meeting Reverend Lawson, as well as I always forget his name, on the East Coast, a minister who was with him on the East Coast. And Lawson was in Memphis. So these are strategists. These are very well-educated people who helped the young people. They also brought in young people, so it was across generations that he operated. It was across racial lines and across educational lines. So there were very poor people there, and there were people who were well educated. He brought in the musicians. I think the movie really showed that there were musicians that came in and helped the movement. In fact, we ended on that, having a conversation about music and the impact of music on the movement and on the time. But what I hadn't seen, because I was a teenager during that time in the North, so I was privy only to what the news showed. And at the same time, I found out through family some of the things that were going on. But I had never visited some of the southern states until the 2000 era, when I went to Mississippi, Louisiana, Alabama, Tennessee. I think I'd flown through Tennessee. But some of the places I'd only been, like I'd been to New Orleans, but not through the depths of the South to really see how people were living. And when I went through the cities, and we went to, where was that? Where is the city that the young man was killed?
Ferguson? No. Oh, Emmett Till?
Emmett Till, yeah,
yes.
That's right above Greenwood, right in Greenwood,
yes.
Greenville. We went to the
his
store, that
yes,
store that
right.
he was at, that he was supposed to go ahead.
So actually, being there gave me another perspective of the kind of commitment that King had to make and everybody else had to make, because communication is not the same as it is in our lives today.
Right.
So there maybe have been a telephone that people shared between each other. People had to walk. There were not buses, subways, taxis. I mean, just thinking about how people got where they were going, they had to walk.
Well, when you talk about him being a leader, and now, my job is devil's advocate here, him being a leader, but there was already a swell.
Oh yeah, but that's what I was
when
saying.
he jumped on board.
Is the coalition that he brought,
and so when
together,
He moved it forward.
and then you're talking about bringing the younger generation in at that time. But see, back then you could identify the African American community. Can you identify the African American community now?
No, I think you can. And let's not forget he was only 25, 26 himself. So he was a young person in the sense that he was a young adult. I mean, he died before he was 40. He was a young adult leading a movement.
Right, but just let me just spin on that a little bit now. As far as being a young adult, a guy in the movement, in the South, young men came into power around their 20s. So that wasn't a new thing then, because from my father, my grandfather, these guys was running households and running the whole plantations and stuff at 19, 20, 21 years old. So he has something to come on from that. You know what I'm saying? But right now, the African American community is full of Asians, is full of Hispanics, is full of all of the diversity here. And then how do you reach in and pull the African Americans over here and guide them when you have all of this other, I'm going to call it, what it is, dead weight? Because there are people in the community that's not going to do nothing to help black people. In fact, they're going to work against. And this brings me to a point. I was born in Mississippi, my country. And Carolyn went down there. She's met family members. We went out on tour several times. We're going all through them, meeting all these people. And I grew up in a cotton field. I grew up as on a sharecropper, as family members of sharecroppers. So when Martin Luther King was talking about coming through, there were so many threats against the black communities because they were so scattered, and so many white people had control over them. So a lot of the pushback, I haven't seen the movie, but a lot of the pushback on Martin Luther King, that's what a lot of it was coming from, not all of it, because he was perceived as a troublemaker.
Absolutely.
And in fact, one of the sheriffs said, "We ain't had no trouble out of our southern niggas until this Martin Luther King come through." And that's how a lot of them felt. And they threatened a lot of the black people, fired them, losing their jobs and the whole bit.
Because people stayed in line in order to keep a job, which isn't any different than today.
It still happens.
It still happens, but you didn't have that many more options. And people also took care of each other. The welfare wasn't as prominent. But when we look at what I learned from the film, that was one of the main things, was really getting a better sense, because I had been to the area. When I was watching, I only knew what I was looking at. But having walked through those dirt roads and seen those small churches, and my heart was really open in another way.
I would agree with that. I want to go back to a couple points. One, you asked the question of where do we go from here? How do we identify the African American community to guide and lead? And I would say a couple of things. One, I think in many ways it's actually a blessing that our communities are becoming so racially diverse and mixed. And when I say that, I say it as someone who has a 7 and a 9-year-old child. And because they are growing up in such racially diverse environments, they really don't see race until it's articulated to them. That doesn't mean they're not impacted by the absence of seeing their own image reflected. Like I see it, my daughter wanting long flowing hair, or them having color issues because of what they're seeing on television, which is everybody else looks like that. I want to look like that, but they don't connect it to race. So I think one of the strengths of being such a diverse culture is it really does give you the opportunity to move through some of the older barriers around race. There is a disadvantage of that as well, right? It can make people feel more disconnected from the history of the African American community. And I do think, I know for my own children, I've had to pull back and give them some of that history to help them understand what has led us to where we are now. So I think it's a balance of the two. When you ask, how do we pull the community forward? I think when you look at the Black Lives Matters movement, the Ferguson Action, Dream Defenders, there are young people who are basically becoming the next Dr. Kings and on and on. They're taking this movement in their own hands. They're framing it in the context of the issues that matter to them: immigration, police brutality, and I think that they're willing to take it its full course. So I think the change is happening. The next steps are happening. We had a really wonderful discussion. We had a screening at the Baldwin Hills Crenshaw Plaza with about 450 seniors and youth. And we brought them together to watch the film Selma and then have a discussion after. And the babies were leading it. Like the questions they were asking were, I'm talking 6, 7, 11-year-olds asking questions like, why is our community this way? And how can I step up and take leadership? Like the questions they were asking were so amazing that it just made me feel this sense of, we don't have to worry about them. Like they got this, and they are so going to drive this world to the next level.
You and I were talking about this in the green room earlier, that there's a consciousness, there's a shift in the consciousness of African Americans. Let's just start in the country or on planet Earth overall. But right now, I'm just focusing in on the African American community. There's a shift in the community. Now, I remember, and Carolyn knows this to be true because she know my kids and the whole bit. When Melky, my youngest, is 24, when 26. They were 20 years ago, I would go to lunch or Sunday dinners or movies with my kids on Sundays, and I had so many women would come to me and say, I wish I could see more African American men with their children. Now, I can clearly see that the times when I was out there and I look around, I say, wow, I'm the only black guy out here with my kids right now. But now, everywhere you go, you see more and more young African American men with their kids. Now, that is a mathematical fact. I'm looking at that. And I see how we have come from the devastation of crack in the community. And we thought that was just the end, which was just devastated us. But the strong has prevailed.
Right.
And so, and I think that we are now looking back at this generation. The gangbangers are now our fathers and grandfathers now. There's not as much gangbanger killing in the neighborhood as it used to be as a whole. And so I do see a consciousness shift in the community now, and I like what I see.
Well, I think one of the things that is happening that no one could really know was going to happen was the killings that have happened over the last couple of years have made us aware of of how black men are treated, especially. And even though we wish Trayvon Martin had not been killed, his life became a platform for raising consciousness. Mike Brown's life has become a platform for another level of consciousness. And now to have the film Selma, who knew this was all going to peak with the movie Selma? Because it's like the dirt had been ruffled over the last 2 or 3 years so that people could really get a sense. And the young people who we've talked about, wake up. And they started waking up because of something happening to them. The Ferguson situation has impacted people around the world. There are people who are protesting in Japan and London and every place else. And then to have a powerful film like Selma come out, it gives me chills, really, because it's like there's something more divine happening
Absolutely.
that brought it all together. And we can't always see this. We can't tell that there's something good and positive and magnificent that's going to come out of a tragedy.
Exactly.
And I know that this is making a difference with the young people. From what you said, I was in a school yesterday. I am part of a program that teaches peer mediation. So we teach 6th graders, 6th and 7th graders, and I was in one of the middle schools. And I created a little discussion about, we were doing role plays. So I said, well, what is something you all want to do? Do you want to go to a game? And about 6 of the kids said, I want to go see Selma. And I'm like, well, I'll pay for that. That's not a problem.
So the kids are actually asking.
But they're asking to go to see Selma.
That's wonderful.
And
I love
so it stopped me in my tracks, really, because instead of saying, some singer or a game, and some of them did say that, or Knott's Berry Farm or something like that, but to say, I want to see Selma, and raise their hand and do that was
So let me
positive.
ask you a question. With this movie now, do you seems to be tapping into a consciousness, whether it was planned or not? I don't think
it wasn't. The
I
movie
don't think
was.
it could have been
The
planned.
movie's been in production for over 10 years.
Over 10 years, yes.
And they've
I
had
didn't know
been
that.
trying to get it.
directors,
Yes.
They've had different
Yes.
actors, and it finally got on track with Ava DuVernay and Oprah. This
Right.
movie has been coming for
It's
a
been
long
coming.
So we
time.
can see where positive film, positive movies
Makes a
talking
difference.
about our
Yes.
community and our struggles.
Yes.
Now, do you see the same thing as a need in the music industry?
Well, I brought that up at the end of the program.
didn't get to really go deep on that
I
one.
was
We
in
need to go
your
deeper
chair,
on that one.
and I looked over and I said, "Now, I grew up with wonderful singers, wonderful music. Now, I didn't say they were wonderful people who were doing the singing, which is what you touched on. Is like, oh, James Brown wasn't all that great. But that wasn't my point, because I know they were doing stuff behind the scenes. However, what they did was they got on track with music that made a difference. In fact, in Selma, they talk about James Brown bringing a team of people there. Mahalia Jackson was spoken about. So you had a gospel singer, you had one of the biggest R&B singers who
Godfather
was
of
there,
Soul
Godfather
was-
of Soul, Marvin Gaye. You had,
Was it
just
Halle
the
Belafonte?
songs.
Did they mention it? Harry Belafonte?
No,
They
not,
didn't- they
not
didn't
in that
name him in the
in that
movie.
film. But when you look at a list of all the people who said, I'm going to give this attention, and I thought about your comment that there are people today, and I know there are. There's some powerful, intelligent, creative black people and white people who are making good sound hip hop music, R&B, and other kinds of music. Yet what I think is the difference is in the 60s, it was what was popular. So it was heard on all stations, on most stations. What I'm seeing as a difference is some of the hip hop music is not heard in the broader sense of the word. So you're welcome to comment on that, because I know you have some
think
thoughts.
one, it's really diverse, right?
Yes,
Our
it's very
music
diverse.
culture is so diverse. You got what we call hip hop, what some people only calls rap. Something,
Right, yes.
Some people get offended if you call certain artists hip hop artists versus
Yep.
rap artists. And so when I think we talk about hip hop as the genre, as it was it was started as a poetic form of communication, a rhythmic, poetic form of communication that was meant to tell the narrative of the streets. It was meant to tell the narrative of poor underclass communities. And I think there are certain artists who have remained true to that. Now, they may not always do it in language that's pleasant for people, and it may speak in the vernacular and using terminology that people use in their neighborhoods, right? Whether it be, conversation that's demeaning to women,
Yes,
right? In terms of
which is
of
my
the-
concern, yes.
right?
Yeah.
But then we've got to address the culture out of which it's born, right? We
Yes.
got to talk about what's being said in the neighborhoods that makes that music possible. But
Yeah.
I think we do have artists like a Common, like a Talib Kweli, like
Yes.
going into RB, India.Arie, Gawapale. We have artists, music, who are just doing amazing things, like elevating consciousness, but also elevating awareness of what's happening from a different point of view.
Well, when rap
And my
first-
point, can
Go
I
ahead,
just
please.
clarify my point? My point was the listening audience. It was numbers. I'm a mathematician, so I was talking about not the availability of the music, but the number of people who were listening to that music.
You think there were more previously than there are now, or more now?
Yes, no,
Oh.
more than.
It was
okay.
that's a mathematical fact. It was
Yes.
more than, see, when rap came rap came about, it was a fun. It wasn't poetic. It wasn't about getting a message out there. It was talking about eating macaroni and cheese and fried chicken in a hotel. I mean, it was all about fun and roller skating.
Yeah, not all of it.
Yeah,
Some of it.
No, I'm
Yeah,
talking the
Sugar
beginning.
Hill Gang in here.
I'm only talking about the beginning. I was right there with the beginning of this stuff. And in fact, a lot of people don't realize the first distributors of hip hop was not the record companies. It was not black people. It was not the white people. It was the first distributors of hip hop. The first distributors of hip hop. And I know some of you are going to write about this now because Yates told you. First distributors of hip hop in America was the Korean swap meets. The black stores wouldn't.
You mean
the black stores wouldn't sell it. The black record stores wouldn't sell it. None of the record companies would pick it up.
Okay.
And what happened was when it was starting out as a dance where they was roller skating too and the whole bit, then some of them came out with positive messages and stuff like that. Then it got a little bit more directed towards pain and suffering.
Right.
And when it got into the pain and suffering, then there was so much there to tap into.
Yeah, they had
There was so much there to tap into.
broad
Because for the first
selection.
time, we saw young youth with Uzis. For the first time, we saw a young man, 20 years old, with $20 million worth of drug money.
Right.
So
the community had changed.
The community had changed.
Absolutely.
The community was poisoned, purposely poisoned with this garbage. And one of the things that Carolyn and I have been in partnering and travel around the country as promoting records. We've worked with everybody from Smokey Robinson to all of these guys and work directly with these guys.
And
So
you work with Pac.
Worked with
Yes.
Tupac and Eazy-E. I was work with Eazy-E and all of those guys. I know for which it bubbled up from. And it wasn't so much what a lot of people, what we don't want to accept in our community, that it wasn't about messages. It was about money. They were putting songs together so they would sell. I'm in the studios with these guys. And they sit there and
That's
go
no
over.
different than Berry Gordy and Motown. I
Well,
mean,
the only
you had
difference
artists
is-
like Marvin Gaye who had to fight for a message.
I love-
Gordy was trying to sell records.
I love you.
That's the
I love your pushback, but the only difference
Yeah.
is Barry Gordy didn't put nothing out there, but if they say put a 357
No,
Magnum,
no,
a
gotcha.
Glock,
Yeah.
whatever they
Right.
call it.
No, I'm not saying that, but I'm
They
saying
said a Glock.
No, I get you, but I'm saying the argument that they were just trying to make money. That's the history of music, period. But they started making money off a different topic. And a topic that we would argue is a more negative topic.
Oh yeah, no question about it. But then the record companies was see the thing about it, when Marvin Gaye and all of these guys was doing positive songs, Gil Scott-Heron, going back to those days, it cost a lot of money to do that.
Right.
And it costs money to go in the studios and do big production. So Lynn Drum Machine Lynn came up with a drum machine. And then after Lynn came up with a drum machine, that took the studios into a whole nother level where a kid could sit in his living room now with the Lynn drum machine and put all the beats he wanted to put together. But then it became cookie cutter. So then the record company, instead of giving someone $50,000 to go in and cut an album, a black artist, they would go there and give them $5,000 to do and cut an album. Then all the drug money came in saying we'll finance this, but we got to make this look good, make that look good.
Got it.
And so that became so easy to start preaching negative stuff instead.
Because it didn't have to go through a studio.
Got it.
It didn't have to go through that.
Yeah, it changed the whole way.
More underground.
Not
was
only
like-
that,
yes.
not only that, it didn't have to go to radio.
Yes,
And because even when it
It
went
was
to
more
radio,
individual.
one of the reasons we stopped doing hip hop, my team, we got in, we stopped doing it because we refused to promote music that for the radio version, you're saying I love you, but for the street version over here, for the sales, it's like I got a Glock upside your head.
Right.
But I'm a firm believer that hurt the consciousness of where we was trying to do in the community. Now that's just my belief. So you feel that the music
and
didn't
that's
play a
why I
part?
brought it up, because what I was saying last week is that I literally almost had mantras of some of the songs we sang that still come up. When the song comes on, I have it in my head, and it's a message that is supportive of what is brings the community forward. And music is so powerful. I mean, I totally believe in the power of music.
I would agree
And
with
it's what we dance to, it's what we make love to, it's what we play to, it's what we have fun with. And those messages are deeply embedded in us.
Now, what
I
I
would
do
agree with
like
that.
now, you take what was really popular a while, spoken word is that.
Yes.
Now that, although it touched into the bad language, but it put it into a perspective that it told a story that you could get something out of it. I remember when the Crips and Bloods first came together in Los Angeles. We was down there at Leon's studio, and I was in charge of managing Phil Donahue. It was on the Phil Donahue show. So I was in charge of managing the two coming together. And for the first time, I had, in my whole life, and I have been in the music business for quite a while now you in a recording studio, guys are coming in with Uzis and Glock 9s in the studio.
Right.
And the guy is playing the piano and keyboard player. Poor guy is scared to death because he was hired by us. And here's a guy with a Glock 9. So he's sitting there, got a good melody. And the guy said, man, I don't want to hear that crap. Let me hear some more of this, and let me hear more shooting this, da-da-da. And that's how we got hip-hop, as we understand it now. And that's where we got this East Coast, West Coast. And I think a lot of the spirit of who we are was lost in that. And I played a part in it. You know, I played a part in it because it was quick money at one time. And that's why I backed away from it. So I'm going off on that, but please.
So there's an opportunity. There's opportunity for us to encourage, embrace, and support young people who have a new message.
Right.
To share with the community, whether it's in poetry, whether it's online, you're blogging, you can do music. The number of outlets in which to share a message has exploded.
Right.
I mean, it's so
and
amazing.
I think our youth take advantage of
They
that.
take advantage,
And
yes.
so they interact with culture differently.
And like you was talking about the diversity of the community now, and one of the things that I loved, I seeing all these white kids with their hands up saying,
Yes.
what's the slogan behind hands
up, don't shoot.
Hands up, don't shoot. I saw Asian kids. I have some of my white friends that are in the older white community that saw Selma and just couldn't believe how sheltered they were from it. And I love the fact that you guys getting these young kids together to go see it, and you're seeing the difference
and
in
the
it.
dialogue, and it's wonderful. Yes.
We were able to. There are currently 275,000 free tickets available for students, middle and high school students across the country to see.
Quickly,
Selma.
tell me, how did you get into that?
So I actually came into the project through a partner of mine, Joshua Dubois at Values Partnerships, who was brought on by Paramount to work on to build an initiative around Selma. And the focus of that initiative is called Selma Hand in Hand, was to specifically bring together communities of faith, diverse communities of faith, get them to go see the film together and then have discussions afterwards. So we organized, I think it was about 270 screenings across the country. We had everyone from Pastor Joel Hunter down in Florida, Bishop Freddie Haynes down in Texas, Cynthia Hale down in Atlanta.
Oh, wow.
We had some really great Claude Alexander, North Carolina, pastors hosting screenings with one another.
I'm only cutting you because of the sake of time. I know time is running out real quick. Carolyn know you, but tell me my audience a little bit about you. Let's introduce yourself to us.
Okay,
because you're part of the show now.
So I'm the president and CEO of Community Advocacy Partners. It's basically a public affairs consulting firm. And so I do a lot of work on political campaigns, public awareness campaigns like the Selma Initiative. My goal is to basically engage our communities in broader opportunities to kind of elevate conversation. So whether it's civic engagement and getting out and voting and, engaging in the political process, or it could be something like, the Selma Initiative or affordable health care or education, just bringing greater awareness to folks and giving them the opportunity to engage. So for me, I see myself as a connector. I love connecting
I love
people.
that, yes.
Yeah, I love connecting people to resources and
You're the
opportunities.
bridge.
That's my call and my
bridge.
role in the world. is
You're
acting as
the
a
bridge, because I've been so proud to know Carolyn. We've been just so close and working together, and I've seen how she's so passionate with working with people, bringing people together, the youth, and I tell everybody, it's just I'm just so fascinated with the growth I see with young women now, and I'm seeing African American women, this well spoken, got a vision, got a dream, got the power, getting out, pounding the pavement, making this thing happen. And I think there's a wave that we all now can look back and say, this was a wave that we can all ride on.
Exactly. One of the things that people don't know, the Black Lives Matters movement was founded by 3 African American women. Actually,
I didn't know that.
Yes, no one knows that, but that's
See?
a really important thing. It's founded by 3 women of
Yes.
African descent that have been organizers for many years. And the movement was not just about Black lives in the sense of Black male lives, but Black women, queer people, like the people who are being killed on a regular basis, our underserved community. So that hashtag has a lot more power than people realize. And the visibility of it, I think, is really important for people to understand that the new leaders of our movement are advocating in ways that our predecessors did not.
I was tell you something that I never thought I'd say this, and okay, Don, please don't beat up on me, but I'm seeing more of the gay and lesbian communities and the African American communities starting to work together now, and I think that's a fascinating thing, because especially when you look at the young people,
right, across
the board, the young people are really the color line is really melting away. The gay, lesbian lines of the whole thing is coming together. I really like what I'm seeing in the movement now, and so people fighting for each other's rights to be free, to live, build a career, raise their families, and the diversity in that.
And I'd like to jump in with information about a continuation of King's legacy. It's called the Season for Nonviolence, and it's celebrated between January 30th and April 4th of every year. This is the 18th year. And it's celebrating the dates of the assassination of January 30th for Gandhi and April 4th for King. And there's 64 days in between. There are actually 65 when you count April the 4th. But during that time, we celebrate different qualities that help to change and shift the moral and social values that people have.
Yes.
I personally believe that we live in a culture of violence, and I am dedicated to up-leveling to a culture of peace and nonviolence. So I want to let you know about some programs that are particularly at Agape. There's an opening program on Wednesday, January 28th. There are several events or programs that I'm teaching. One is Visionaries of Justice and Peace, which is on Tuesdays for 5 weeks. Beyond Forgiveness, Healing Anger, Resentment, and Conflict, which is a 5-week class over Thursdays from February 3rd. And I'm doing a daily meditation every day for 65 days at 7 a.m.
You're committing to that?
I'm committing to that.
Beautiful.
7 a.m. for 15 minutes. And we'll do a short time of meditation. We'll discuss equality and how you can take that quality on for the day and how it can make a change in your life. And then it'll be a short, simple prayer at the end. 65 days. So
will that be like a call-in, or
it's a call-in?
Oh, okay, that's
it'll
I'm
be a teleseminar.
I'm gonna do a 15 minutes. I need all the meditation.
It's a telecircle.
I need all the meditation and prayer.
That's actually good. That can.
And I was actually at a Clue program this morning, which is a coming together within LA of people united in equality, clergy and laymen united in equality. And at the Clue meeting, they announced that there's going to be a march within LA on April the 4th to honor King. Okay. So I will let you know more when we have more information, but let us hold that as a day of us coming together. It's people united from different economic backgrounds, from different cultural backgrounds, and religious backgrounds.
And there's actually going to be a march to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Selma march. I think it's March 21st, and the president is actually going to go down to Selma to march.
Gonna do that.
Really?
Yes, which is huge.
And he also has been quietly supporting Ferguson and doing some things.
Yeah, and that's the whole thing. Going back to the president's speech, and so when we were critiquing it, and there's a lot of things that as a president, if you know how to listen with a third ear and see with a third eye, you'll know that there are some things that are being done about police brutality, about safety in the streets for both parties. I mean, we want our policemen to be safe as well.
Right.
But at the same time, as a black man, I personally don't fear anything. But that's just me. But I know I remember the fear, and I know what it feels like out there. And so when you look at a man like myself, that nowhere in America can I go running and jogging at night. That makes absolutely no sense. That makes absolutely no sense. Yeah. And our young African-American men have died on every continent on the planet for this country, for this flag.
Absolutely.
And I think there's a lot to be done. And I know we got to come to this little end here. Yes. So I think we might have went a little bit over, but upstairs will let me. Now, I'll be able to negotiate this with upstairs. But as we close, and I like to close the show by giving everybody an opportunity to say their piece in the words of wisdom. So would you please give us a few words of wisdom as we close?
I think the most important piece I would say, take away from this Martin Luther King holiday and the film Selma, is it is extremely important that we all do what we can from where we can. Not all of us are going to be out in the streets marching, but some of us have radio shows and newspapers and are lawyers and doctors and have the ability to make an impact for the benefit of all. And so I think it's important for us to keep evaluating what our contribution to the world and to our community is going to be.
Oh, I love that. I love that. Carolyn?
This is Reverend Carolyn Wilkins. I wanted to let you know that I am a proponent and an ambassador for peace and nonviolence in the world. Please contact me at globalworks@agapelive.com if you have any questions or want any more information regarding the programs that I mentioned. And I'd like for each of you to think about how you can make an impact on a child. Because they're waiting for your smile, they're waiting for your support, they're waiting for your recognition.
Oh, wow, that's very powerful. In fact, what both of you just said just touched me, because when you just spoke about do what you can do from the position that you're standing in, not where you wished you were standing, but from where you are. And touching a kid, because we do children books, and we're going to move more and more and get in more and more children books about a consciousness level of thinking as well. And one of the things that I took upon myself is that I went to the police departments here in my community. I went to the sheriff department in Marina Del Rey and shook hands and showed them how much I appreciate them. But yet, and then I went to Culver City Police Department, and I talked to the policemen there. I didn't set up an appointment. I just walked in, asked to speak to the day captain, shook their hand. They came out, and I did the same thing with the Culver City Highway Patrol. They came out and hugged me with their guns on. They didn't hold their guns, and these was white cops and black cops, and the warmthness that they gave me as an African American male walking into the police department and extending a hand of peace and asking, what can I do to help bridge this gap between us? And I've gotten I got wonderful call back, so I got to do some follow up with that while I'm back. And I take that as what you're saying. Do something from where you're standing and take the initiative. Get out there and make something happen. Listen to what these young ladies have said. I'm so proud to be sitting here with these strong African-American women and just women in general. And I always end the show with a nation can rise no higher than it elevates its woman. This is Larry X's Show. Peace. We're out. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.